I never thought I'd be standing at a podium, trying to honor my stillborn daughter, while my sister hijacked the moment to announce her pregnancy. But that's exactly what happened 3 years ago, and I'm only now able to talk about it without completely falling apart. The memorial service was small, just 30 people in the garden of the funeral home in Rochester, where we laid my daughter Emma to rest. She was stillborn at 37 weeks, perfect in every way except that she never took a breath. The doctors couldn't explain it. Sometimes these things just happen, they said, as if that was supposed to comfort me. I had spent weeks writing that speech. How do you summarize a life that never began? How do you honor dreams that will never come true? I wanted everyone to know who Emma would have been, the nursery we'd painted sunshine yellow, the little library of books we'd collected, the way she used to kick whenever my husband James played guitar against my belly. I was halfway through my speech when I noticed my sister Vanessa whispering to our mother in the front row. They were smiling at my daughter's memorial service. I faltered for a moment but continued. Then Vanessa stood up. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, not looking sorry at all, "but I just can't hold it in anymore. Mom already knows, but I wanted to tell everyone that Brad and I are expecting. I'm 12 weeks along." The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen at the podium, clutching Emma's ultrasound photo. My husband James half rose from his seat, his face contorted with anger and disbelief. My mother broke the silence with a squeal of delight. "Isn't it wonderful, a new grandchild? It's like God is giving us a gift to heal our hearts." I don't remember dropping the microphone. I don't remember walking away from the podium. The next thing I clearly recall is sitting in our car in the parking lot, James holding my hand so tightly it hurt, both of us unable to speak. Vanessa and I were always different, even though we're only 2 years apart. She's older, 35 now, and has always been the golden child. Growing up in our small Connecticut town, she was the one with the perfect grades, the cheerleading captain, homecoming queen. I was quieter, more artistic. I painted, wrote poetry, kept to myself. Our parents, especially our mother, never quite knew what to do with me. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom would ask whenever I brought home a B+ instead of an A, or chose art club over student council. Vanessa knows how to make people like her. Maybe that's why I was so surprised when I met James first, got married first, and got pregnant first. For once in my life, I was ahead of Vanessa's carefully plotted timeline. She'd been with Brad for 5 years, but kept putting off marriage until her career in pharmaceutical sales was established enough. When James and I announced our pregnancy, I saw something flash across her face, something ugly and raw that disappeared so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The first red flag came at my baby shower. Vanessa insisted on hosting it, overruling my best friend Tara, who had already started planning. "I'm her sister," Vanessa told Tara. "This is my job." The shower was perfectly executed, like everything Vanessa does, elegant decorations in soft mint green. We hadn't told anyone we were having a girl, expensive catering, professional photographer. But somehow I barely appeared in any photos. The album Vanessa presented me with later was filled with pictures of her setting up decorations, her cutting the cake, her opening gifts on my behalf because I looked tired. "You seemed overwhelmed," she explained when I mentioned it. "I was just helping. You're always so sensitive, Megan." When Emma died, Vanessa was the first person I called after James. She arrived at the hospital within the hour, perfectly put together despite the 2 a.m. call, not a hair out of place. She took control immediately, calling our parents, contacting the funeral home, ordering food for the house. "You don't need to worry about anything," she kept saying. "I'll handle it all." And she did. She chose the funeral home without consulting us. She selected the tiny white casket when I couldn't bear to look at the options. She even picked out the outfit Emma would be buried in, not the one James and I had brought to the hospital in my carefully packed birth bag, but a different one she thought was more appropriate. I was too shattered to fight her on any of it. The grief was physical, like someone had hollowed out my chest with a rusty spoon. I could barely breathe, let alone make decisions. James tried to intervene a few times, but Vanessa would pull him aside and whisper, "She needs to rest. Let me handle this. I know what's best for my sister." The memorial service was scheduled for 2 weeks after Emma's death. I insisted on writing the eulogy myself. It was the one thing I wouldn't let Vanessa control. I spent days crafting those words, pouring my heart onto the page, trying to capture the essence of a daughter I'd never get to know. And then Vanessa shattered that moment too. After the memorial, which we left early, James wanted to confront her. I begged him not to. Please, I whispered. I can't handle any more drama today. I just want to go home. That night, my phone exploded with messages. Some people were horrified by what Vanessa had done. Others thought I was overreacting, that life goes on, that I should be happy for my sister. My mother called 6 times, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. You embarrassed your sister by walking out, she said in the last one. She was just trying to bring some joy to a sad day. You've always been jealous of her. I thought you'd grown out of it. Jealous, as if I was the one who couldn't stand someone else having the spotlight for once. 3 days later, Vanessa showed up at our door with a gift basket and a practice speech. I'm sorry if my timing wasn't perfect, she said, not meeting my eyes. I was just so emotional that day. And Mom kept pressing me to tell everyone while the family was gathered. You know how she gets. No apology for hijacking my daughter's memorial. No acknowledgement of how inappropriate her announcement was. Just excuses and deflection. I brought you some self-care items, she continued, pushing the basket into my hands. Pregnancy-safe bath products. I've been so sick with morning sickness. These are the only things helping me feel human. I stood there holding the basket, unable to form words. James appeared behind me, took one look at the situation, and gently moved me aside. Vanessa, now isn't a good time, he said firmly. We'll call you when we're ready to talk. He closed the door on her surprised face. It was the first time anyone in my family had ever set a boundary with Vanessa. That night, my mother called again. Your sister is devastated, she said, without preamble. She's crying so hard I'm worried about the baby. Stress isn't good for pregnant women, Megan. You need to apologize. I felt something snap inside me. Apologize? For what exactly? For being upset that she announced her pregnancy at my daughter's funeral. Memorial service, my mother corrected, as if that made a difference. And yes, she's pregnant, Megan. She's emotional. You need to be the bigger person here. I hung up on her, another first. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and isolation. Friends stopped calling because they didn't know what to say. My mother and father came by once, awkwardly sat on our couch for 20 minutes, then left with promises to check in soon. They didn't. Vanessa's pregnancy updates flooded social media. Weekly bump photos, ultrasound pictures, gender reveal party, a boy. Each post garnered dozens of comments from relatives and mutual friends, including many who had attended Emma's memorial but never reached out to me afterward. 4 months after Emma died, my mother called to discuss Thanksgiving plans. We're doing it at Vanessa's this year, she announced. She's decorating the nursery that weekend and needs help. We thought we'd combine it with Thanksgiving so everyone can be there. Everyone except us, I said quietly. Well, of course you're invited, my mother said, sounding confused. Though I understand if it's too hard for you, seeing the nursery and everything. That was the moment I realized my family expected me to orbit around Vanessa's joy while suppressing my own grief. My pain made them uncomfortable. Her happiness gave them something to celebrate. The choice was obvious to them. We'll be spending Thanksgiving with James's family, I lied. We actually spent it alone, eating takeout and watching movies. Both of us too raw to face anyone's festive cheer. By Christmas, Vanessa was 7 months pregnant and the undisputed center of the family universe. My parents converted their home office into a second nursery for when the baby visits. My mother called me one evening, excited about the crib they'd just purchased. It's the exact one Vanessa wanted, over $1,000. Can you believe it? Your father nearly had a heart attack, but nothing's too good for our first grandchild. First grandchild. As if Emma had never existed. Emma was your first grandchild, I said, my voice shaking. The pause on the other end of the line was telling. Oh, Megan, my mother sighed. You know what I mean. The first one will actually get to spoil and watch grow up. I hung up again. This time, she didn't call back. Vanessa's son, Ethan, was born in March. Healthy, perfect, and immediately the subject of a professional photo shoot that plastered my social media feeds. My parents temporarily moved into her guest room to help, though Vanessa also hired a night nurse and a postpartum doula. I sent a gift, a handmade blanket I'd spent weeks knitting through tears, but couldn't bring myself to visit. The thought of walking into a nursery, smelling that newborn smell, holding a baby that wasn't Emma, I just couldn't do it. "You're punishing an innocent baby because you're jealous of your sister," my mother said when she called to demand I visit. "This isn't like you, Megan. You used to be such a kind person." Used to be, as if grief had transformed me into someone unrecognizable. Maybe it had. 6 months after Ethan's birth, I hit rock bottom. I was back at work, teaching art at the local high school, but functioning on autopilot. James and I barely spoke, not because we were angry with each other, but because we were both so deeply submerged in our individual grief that reaching out felt impossible. I'd come home to find him sitting in Emma's nursery, which we still hadn't dismantled, silent tears running down his face. He'd find me in the shower, sobbing so hard I couldn't catch my breath. We were drowning separately, together. Then came my birthday. I didn't want to celebrate, but James insisted on at least getting dinner at my favorite restaurant. When we arrived home, there was a package on the porch, a birthday gift from Vanessa. Inside was a silver photo frame with Ethan's picture and an inscription, "To the world's best aunt." I hurled it against the wall. The glass shattered, sending shards across our living room floor. James didn't say a word, just knelt down and started picking up the pieces. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I can't pretend everything's okay." That night, I finally broke down completely. I screamed until my voice gave out. I beat my fists against James's chest as he held me, both of us collapsing to the floor. I raged against Vanessa, my parents, the universe, myself. Why Emma? Why us? Why couldn't anyone see how much we were suffering? "I don't know who I am anymore," I told James when I could finally speak again. "I don't recognize myself. I don't know how to live in this world where my daughter is gone, and everyone expects me to just move on." James held my face between his hands. "Then we build a new world," he said simply, "one where Emma exists, where our grief is real, and where we don't have to pretend for anyone else's comfort." It was the first time in months I'd felt a flicker of something other than despair. The next day, I called a therapist who specialized in pregnancy loss. James found a support group for fathers who had lost children. We started the slow, excruciating work of processing our grief, not to get over it as my mother had suggested multiple times, but to learn how to carry it. 3 weeks into therapy, my therapist Sarah asked a question that changed everything. "What would you say to Vanessa if you weren't afraid of the consequences?" I thought about it for a long time. I'd tell her that she stole something from me that I can never get back. That moment at Emma's memorial was my one chance to publicly honor my daughter, and she turned it into her moment. I'd tell her that I don't know if I can ever forgive her for that. Sarah nodded. "So why don't you?" The idea terrified me. Confrontation wasn't in my nature, especially not with Vanessa, who had always been able to twist any situation to make herself the victim. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to speak my truth, even if just once. I didn't warn her I was coming. I drove to her house on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew Brad would be at work. When she opened the door with Ethan on her hip, her smile faltered. "Megan, this is unexpected." "We need to talk," I said, walking past her into the house. "Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" She put Ethan in his playpen and led me to the kitchen, nervously straightening things as she walked. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Tea?" "No," I said, sitting at the island. "I need you to listen to me, really listen." For the next 20 minutes, I told her everything. How her announcement had devastated me. How her lack of genuine apology had deepened the wound. How our family's immediate pivot to celebrating her pregnancy while erasing Emma had made me feel invisible in my own grief. "You've always needed to be the center of attention," I said, my voice steady despite the tears running down my face. "But that day wasn't about you. It was the only day that would ever be about Emma, and you took it from me." Vanessa's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, defensiveness, anger, and finally, something that looked almost like shame. I didn't think she started. "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You didn't think about anyone but yourself. You never do." She was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want from me, Megan? It happened. I can't take it back. I want you to acknowledge what you did. not with excuses or deflection. I want you to understand how deeply you hurt me, and I want a real apology." Vanessa looked down at her perfectly manicured nails. "I'm sorry you were hurt," she said finally. "That wasn't my intention. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was probably the best I would get." Some people aren't capable of true empathy. They can only see the world through the lens of their own desires and needs. My sister was one of those people. I stood up. "I'm not coming to Christmas this year, or Easter, or any family gathering where I'm expected to pretend Emma never existed, or that what you did was okay. Tell Mom and Dad if you want, or don't. I don't really care anymore." As I walked toward the door, Vanessa called after me. "You can't avoid us forever, Megan. We're family." I turned back to look at her one last time. Family doesn't do what you did to me. Family shows up for each other's pain, not just each other's joy. That was 2 years ago. I'd like to say there was a dramatic reconciliation, that Vanessa had a change of heart, that my parents finally understood. But real life isn't that neat. My relationship with my family is still strained. We see each other occasionally, birthdays, major holidays, but there's a distance that wasn't there before. A line I drew that they still don't fully understand. James and I are doing better. We finally packed up Emma's nursery last year, donating most items to a women's shelter, but keeping a few precious things in a memory box. We're in therapy, individually and together. We're talking about trying again for another baby, though the thought still terrifies me. Last month, on what would have been Emma's 3rd birthday, we planted a cherry tree in our backyard. As we patted the soil around its base, James asked if I wanted to say a few words. I thought about the speech I never got to finish at Emma's memorial, the words I'd carefully crafted to honor our daughter. For a moment, I considered trying to recreate it, but then I realized something important. Those words belonged to a different version of me, the woman I was before I understood how quickly joy can turn to ashes, how family can fail you when you need them most, how strength sometimes means walking away. Instead, I placed my hand on the slender trunk of the tree and said simply, "We remember you, Emma. We will always remember you." Sometimes the most powerful thing isn't what you say to others, but what you finally admit to yourself. That some wounds never fully heal, that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and that the family you're born into isn't always the family that deserves your heart. The people who stand with you in your darkest moments, those are your real family. Everyone else is just related to you,